Hello everyone, it's Julie from Heart to Hand Stamping, and I'm back again with this third and final part of our video series, One Kaszazz Background Stamp 3 Ways. And if you haven't seen the last two videos I've created, I challenged myself to create a project, this one here, with one background stamp. This is the only one I owned at the time, so I wanted to make a project for you guys using this one stamp. And in the first video, I'll leave a link to that above and below. I showed you how I created these background papers using that stamp. And then in the second video, and again I'll leave a link to that one above and below, I showed you how to actually construct this card and put it together, and we learned how to make this little box pocket here with this lovely little window on the top, and we used our stamp to create that window. Now in this third video, I'm going to show you how I use this stamp set to create some lovely little flower embellishments and a butterfly to embellish my project with. So all you're going to need to create that today is some ordinary photocopier paper like this. It's nothing special about it, it's just photocopier paper. And the inks that I've been using throughout the series, so I'm going to be using Distress Oxide Walnut Stain, Distress Oxide Speckled Egg, and the Distress Ink Antique Linen, just the plain one. You're going to need a water bottle, of course, the stamps. If you don't have these stamps, don't worry, you can always use circle punches in various sizes and you'll get a very similar result. You're also going to need, I like to use some little tweezers to help pick up the flowers, and awl. We're going to be making some little tendrils, and I use this to wrap them around. If you don't have a paper awl, you can always use a knitting needle, some little scissors, and also I've got here a mouse pad, and I've just turned it upside down, so I've got the rubber side here, and as you can see I've already been using this. This is what we're going to be shaping our flowers on, and I just use just an ordinary ball tool for that, the larger one, to shape the flowers, but I'll show you how I do that. It's also really handy to have some paper towel on hand, because today I will warn you we're going to get quite inky. Very inky fingers. So if you don't like getting inky fingers, well, maybe this technique might not be for you. You could, if you wanted to, instead take something like these paper flowers and leaves, and maybe you could sponge some ink on those. Or you could just buy some buy some embellishments that are already made, and all you've got to do is adhere them to your card. So you could put some gloves on, but I find one of the techniques I'm going to do, you're going to be twirling paper, so the gloves kind of get in the way, so it's a bit hard to avoid inky fingers today, so sorry about that guys if you don't really like it. Also, I'll just show you on the card that we've been making, I did go ahead and do a few things off camera. On the little card insert, I actually went ahead and put a little eyelet on here. And all this is just those eyelets you buy. I got these from Ronnie's. You get them in a packet, you get lots of them, and I just took my speckled egg oxide ink with a sponge, and I sponged the whole sheet so they're all coloured, and you can do that to mix and match with any of your colours. So I actually have a sheet, I'm planning on making a sheet for each of my colours, so I always have an eyelet to match. And then I just stuck it on in the middle here, and then punched a hole through both the layers. And then I'm going to pop some ribbon through that and tie a nice bow. So the ribbon I'm using is the 1/4 inch organdy white ribbon, and then I think it's about 11 inches I've cut off. I just put some ink on my craft mat, a bit of water, and just popped it through to dye it, and then let it dry. So I'm going to be threading that through that hole later. Also, I've just popped a word on my other card that comes in this side. So if you've been watching this series, you will have known that I've done all my sentiments on my computer because I didn't have any sentiment stamps. If you do have little word stamps, that would be perfect. You could just stamp some of those out just to decorate the card. I have a few more I'm using, but just for now I decided to stick that one on there. So what I've done here to start with is I've done some stamping and a little bit of cutting. So this is just my A4 photocopier paper, and what I've done is first of all I've cut a 1/4 inch strip off this long side, and that's actually a little bit important that you cut this strip this way as opposed to across that way, because paper has a grain to it and it does behave differently and fold differently depending on which way you do it. So this is what we're going to be making our stems out of, and I find just by cutting it along the long edge it behaves a little more for you and becomes a little bit more compliant. So you're going to cut a 1/4 inch strip and a 1/2 inch strip. You're going to cut those off, and then some stamping. So I'm going to show you how I created my larger flower. I'll just show you, I've done a little prototype here of something to give you an idea of what it looks like. There it is there. And it's going to go, I'll show you on the card. I'm thinking I'm going to put it here. I haven't really decided, but I think it's going to go there like that. So in this flower I've got 3 layers, but I've actually decided to do a 4th layer. So that's what these 4 stampings are for. So this is for this flower. So I've stamped my largest stamp with the Distress Oxide Speckled Egg. This one here I've stamped once, and then the smaller stamp I've stamped 3 times there. And you might notice I've got some ink here in the center. I did that on purpose. Just the more ink on there the better. We're going to be coloring these anyway. Then I've taken the small stamp again and I've stamped it in antique linen, and I've also stamped it once in the walnut stain oxide ink also. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these out and show you how I did that, and I'll be back. Okay, well I've got those cut out now, and I've kind of tried to leave them in the paper to show you what I've done. And don't be fussy about this. You're not going to notice any uneven edges. So with the largest circle, I've actually cut it out inside that stamped circle, so we can set that aside. For the next one, I've actually cut it, the first circle here, on the outside, around the outside of the stamp. And I've also cut this little moon shape on the outside as well, and we're going to keep those. We're making these into leaves, so I'll set that aside. And then the next one I've actually cut on the inside of that stamped image, set that aside, and I've done that just to alter the size of the petals. And again I've cut out this little moon shape just on the outside. This one's cut the same way, inside the circle and on the outside of that little moon shape. And then for the antique linen one, I've just cut around the outside of that circle. And again, just cut out our little moon shape. That's another leaf. This, by the way, is going to form the center of our flower. And then this is going to form our butterfly. So I've just roughly cut around the outside of that circle, and also the little moon shape as well. So make sure you keep all these little bits because we'll be making those into leaves. So the first thing we're going to, and also I've cut the strips that I cut off the side. That 1/4 inch strip I've just simply cut in half, so we've got 2 pieces the same length. I've done that just because it's a little bit easier to handle when they're shorter. And then the 1/2 inch strip, all you need is just about a 1 inch piece cut off that. That's going to form our little butterfly's body. So we'll just set those aside for the moment, and we're just going to work on the flower center first, because that's actually going to take some time to dry. So it's a good idea to go ahead and do that first. So that's really easy. We're just going to take our antique linen. We're going to pop some down on our craft mat like that. Just like that. And then I'm going to come in with my water. Put a bit of water down, and then we're just going to lay our circle in it, in this ink, and we're just going to get it nice and wet and covered in that ink, just like that. And then all we're going to do is we're just going to simply scrunch it up like that and just roll it in the palm of your hand like this to create a ball. And you can just keep dipping it in that ink just to keep picking it up. The wetter it is, the more it kind of becomes pliable and wants to form into that ball shape. So you just kind of do that quite firmly in your hand like that. Sorry guys, off camera. And then when you're happy with it, you just squash it down a little bit. Just give it a little bit of a squash down. So it's like that, like a little dome, I suppose. And that's going to form our flower center. I like the sort of texture and pattern you get in there. Now you're going to set that aside to dry. And then what I did when mine was dry, I actually went and put a little bit of glitter. I don't know if you can see that glitter in there. And you don't have to do that. I just thought it would look nice. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. I use the Distress Dry Glitter Clear Rock Candy. So I just popped a little bit of glue on top and just dipped it in, and then I let that aside to dry. So I'm going to clean up this mess, and next I'm going to show you how to create the branches and tendrils. Okay, to form the body for your little butterfly, we're going to take our little 1-inch piece, and I've just folded it in half lengthwise like that. And I'm just going to taper one end. So I'm just going to come in a little bit and just taper it like that, just so it looks a bit like a butterfly's body before we color it. So that's like that. Okay, so now we're just going to pop, similar to the way we did our flower center, we're just going to pop some of our walnut stain oxide ink down. And this is where your fingers are going to get quite messy, but for this technique it's unavoidable. If you don't want to do this, I believe you can get paper twine. That might be a good thing too, saves you doing this in various colors. But if you don't have it, this is how we make it. So I'm going to put some water, same as before. And I'm going to take my little 1/4-inch strip, and we're going to soak it in this color like that. And I just sort of take off the excess ink like that. Got my paper towel handy here. I'm just going to blot my fingers off on there like that. And then to twirl it, all you're going to do is pinch one end like that, and you just start twirling it in your fingers like this. So my left hand is doing the twirling, and my right hand is just supporting that paper like that. And I'm just twirling that between my fingers as I'm going along like that. And this is why we just use shorter pieces of paper. If it's too long, it tends to break. Not that that matters too much, because you can join them up. And then when I get to the other end like this, I'm just going to start twirling those paper, the two ends, so in opposite directions. So twirling away and toward me like this. So I get that nice and tight like that. If you have any bumpy bits, you can just bring your finger in and twirl them between your fingers to smooth it out like that. And you can add, if you want, a little bit more ink on there. It just adds a little bit of variation in it like that. And you just hold it there for a few seconds or so, just so it sort of trains it in that shape. Now this is where you need your knitting needle or your awl. I'm just going to use my awl. I'm just using this because it's on my desk. I'm just going to hold it down one end here, and I'm just going to very gently wrap it around my awl like that. Just like this. And I'm just going to hold it in place like that. You just hold it in place again for a few seconds like this. Now I have made a couple of these, and I've also made just a straight piece as well that I could just use as a branch. So it's up to you how you want to decorate it, but I just like to have them on hand. And then all you do is you slide it off like that. You could leave it on if you want to, but if you want to make a few, you're going to need your awl or your knitting needle. And then you just set that aside to dry, and we've got a nice little tendril like that. To create a little butterfly's body, it's done in exactly the same way. I'm just going to dip that piece we cut into the ink, make sure it's all covered. I just sort of wipe off the excess. I just blot my fingers on my paper towel like that. And then I just pinch that narrow end and just twirl it around. This is just a little piece, so it's probably a little bit more fiddly actually to make the smaller pieces, but it makes a nice little butterfly's body. If you just take it slowly, don't rush, it'll be fine. And if you break it, it's not the end of the world. Don't worry about it. It's only paper and ink. Give it another go, or just use your little torn off pieces. It's fine. So by trimming that little edge bit off, you can see we've sort of got a narrower tail section, and then we've got it getting thicker toward the head. And you just hold that. Now this is actually a bit long for our butterfly, but we're going to be trimming that down to suit. So, and there we have a little butterfly's body as well. While our little tendrils are drying, and they'll take a little while to dry just like our flower centers, I'm going to go ahead now and create the flowers. So to create those, we've got to do a little bit of cutting first. So I'll show you on this big one, and they're all cut in exactly the same way. Now it's really, really simple. All you've got to do is fold your circle in half like that, and then fold it in half again just to find the midpoint, and pinch it like that and unfold it. And now I'm going to fold this into thirds. Okay, so that will match that side like that. And I'm just eyeballing this. If you don't get it right the first time, that's fine. You can just refold it a little bit. It's fine. And like that. So I've got that folded into thirds like that, see? So you fold it over and then you fold it back. I'll show you again. So you just fold it over and then you fold it back. And then you're just going to take your little scissors, and I come down probably about 1/4 of an inch from that tip, and I come down and I'm just going to start cutting up that fold. I want to cut the folds off like that. And I'm going to come around into a petal shape like this, like that. And then I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. Cut those folds off, come around the top like that, like a petal shape. So that's the shape you should have, something similar. And then when we open it out, we should have a 6-petal flower like that. So now we have our 6 petals that we're going to go ahead and colour. So you're going to repeat that for the other 3 smaller circles in exactly the same way we did this. Now for this brown one, for the walnut stain one, this is going to form our butterfly. So this one's a little bit different, but we start the same way. We're going to fold it in half like that. And then we're just simply going to fold it in half again. So this time we're just folding it into quarters like that. Okay, like that. And then once again, we're going to cut it in a very similar way. I'm going to come down, maybe because this one's smaller, about 1/8 of an inch from the point. And I'm going to come up and imagine this being the top butterfly wing. So this will be where the head is. So I'm going to come up and I'm just going to cut around like a wing shape. So I'm going to come around here like that. And then I do a little dip in and out and then around, cutting those folded edges off like that. So that's the shape you have, kind of like a wing, looks like a little butterfly wing. And then when we open that up, we have the start of our butterfly as well. Okay, so we'll set our butterfly, oh no, actually we'll keep that one because we're going to colour it the same colour as our flowers. So to colour the flowers, it is exactly the same as what we've been doing. So you cut them first. I'll just set these aside. We're going to take our Distress Oxide in the Speckled Egg. Whoops. And we're just going to pop some ink on our craft mat like that. Going to take my water bottle and I'm going to pop my flower face down into that ink. Just going to make sure we get ink all over it, and also you want to do the back side. So both sides. Just be a little bit gentle with it because they can tear. Like that. And I have that all covered in ink, and then I just set it down on my mat like that. You can take your finger and add a bit more if you want to. And then my butterfly, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pop it into the blue ink, into the Speckled Egg ink. Same thing, front and back as well. Like that. And pop it down on my craft mat. And then you go ahead and you repeat that for the other 3 petal layers that are going on the flower. And then all you do is you take your heat tool and dry them thoroughly, and I'll be back when I've done that. Now that my butterfly is dry, I'm going to do a little bit of extra stamping on it just for a little bit more interest. So I'm going to take my Distress Oxide in the Walnut Stain, and you might notice on this larger stamp these lovely little dots here. So I'm going to utilize those just by popping that into my stamp pad. I just really want these dots, and I'm just going to stamp a couple on my butterfly just to add that little bit more of a interest to it. Like that, like that. So you can see that just adds a little bit more interest to my butterfly. And then when I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and take my ink blending tool, and I'm just going to blend around the edges. So I'm just going to fold my butterfly in half like that, and this is where the body's going to go in the center. So I'm just going to add a little bit of my ink in the center here like that. Flip it over. Going to do the same on the other side like that, and then I'm just going to come in and do the edges. I'm going to pop a little bit extra on the tips of the wings, and again this is just all optional like that, on the tip like that and around, and I'm going to repeat that on the other side, and I'm also going to do it on the back side of my butterfly. So I'm going to add some ink on the back side here as well. Now also on all my flowers that I've made, I'm going to come in and I'm going to ink all the tips of my petals like this. And when I've done that, I'm going to flip it over and do the other side. So it's really important you treat both sides the same, because we're shaping them. They're going to be quite dimensional, and you will see the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for all my flowers and for my butterfly. I've got all my edges inked now, and it's really important before we go ahead and start shaping our petals that they are really super dry. So I always go over these with the heat gun again, just to make sure all that ink is dry, and also the same on my butterfly. I like to do that too. Now, to shape your petals, it's really easy. So I'm going to take my ball stylus here, and I'm using the largest tip here. And the way we're going to start is we're just going to come to the edge here. I've brought you in a bit closer, guys, so hopefully you can see what I'm doing. And all I'm doing is I am popping my ball tool around the edge, and can you see how that's just making a nice crinkled edge on my petal? And then when you've done that, you're just going to bring your ball tool down toward the center of the flower, just dragging it like that. I'm going to drag it once on the side, once in the center, and once on the other side like that, toward the center. And you can see that that's already starting to shape that nicely. So I'll do that again for you with another one. So we start just by, you're just pushing that in, and that creates a nice little crinkle on the edge. And then I'm going to drag my ball stylus down toward the center on the edge, and then I'm going to drag it down in the middle, and I'm going to drag it down the other side like that, and that curls my petals up for me like that. And we're going to, that's done in exactly the same way on all my flower pieces, and on the butterfly it's a very similar process. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come along here along the edge of the wing. Again, I'm just making a nice little crinkle first, and then I'm just going to come down each side of the wing like that. And then I'll do the same on this side just to show you, like that. Crinkle the edges and then bring it down toward the middle like that. So that's how it looks, and it puts some lovely little veins in there. You can see that that looks nice compared to the flat side, and the same with the flower. You can see that it's added some nice little veins in my leaf, and it just creates that really shabby look. So go ahead and do that with all of your flower pieces, and I'll show you what I've ended up with. To create your leaves, we do it in exactly the same way we did for the flowers. So remember these little moon shapes that we cut off? All you're going to do is colour those with some antique linen and dry them thoroughly. And so here's one here that's been dyed with the antique linen, and then I've taken the walnut stain oxide and I've done the edges both back and front the same as I did for the flowers. And then to shape them, it's also the same. So I'm just going to pop it down on my mouse pad and take my ball tool, and I've popped it down with the wrong side up. And all I'm going to do is start at one of the tips here and start pressing down like we did, same with the petals, all around the curved area. Now I'm going to leave one end flat, this end down here, because that's the bit I'm going to stick underneath the flower, and I come down the other side in exactly the same way, and you can see that leaf is already curling up and becoming dimensional, which is really nice. And then to add a vein, all I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the tip, and I'm going to come down the center of that leaf like this, right down to the bottom. And you can see I've got this beautiful little leaf that's all curled up and ready to go. So this is the end I'm going to stick down. So I'll show you what I have so far. I'll just set that aside. And this is what I have, all my pieces that I have so far. So with my butterfly, I've actually cut that in half. So you might remember we had it joined together like that. And I actually cut it in half because what I'm going to do when I stick it down is rather than have it stuck together like that, I'm going to just pull it, I'm going to put the two tail pieces together and pull it apart like that, so that it looks a little bit more like a butterfly. So just cut that in half. So you basically have two sets of wings. And then here are my flower petals. So you should have a large one, the next size down, and then these two smaller ones. And this one I've curled up quite a lot. Now you can control how much it curls up just by how hard you're pressing with your ball stylus tool. So all I'm going to do to build this flower is take my flower center that I've got some nice little glitter on. I'm going to adhere that to the center of my smallest one in there. And then I'm going to just stack them one on top of the other, really simple, just offsetting the petals slightly to create this sort of shape. And I'll show you that in a minute. So that will be the main flower. And then with these smaller ones, you can also make some little buds. So all you've got to do is pull your petals up like this and you can create a little bud. Now in this one that I've made, I've actually put a center inside of it. I don't know if you can see that. I have a center down inside of there. And I've just curled the petals in the same way. I've brought them up and I've just put little bits of glue around just to sort of hold that, and then I've pressed it down just to curl those petals over a bit. So that's a little bud. I have another one here that I can create a bud out of, or a flower center. These are my leaves that I've created. I've got all these leaves to use. Here's just the branch that we made earlier in a straight one, but here's some little tendrils and you can stretch these out and make them into little tendrils. And here's little butterfly bodies that I've made, and I've cut them down so that they're smaller. So that's what they look like. Whoops, keep dropping them. Okay, that's those two as well. So I'm going to go ahead now and start. I'm going to do it off camera because it's a little bit fiddly deciding how I want things to go, and then I'll come back and show you what I came up with. Well, here's my flower. I've managed to stack all those layers together, and as you can see, I've got my little glittery center in there. Hopefully you can see that. And I'm going to adhere that in this corner on here, and I'm going to pop some leaves and stems and so on underneath there. Also, the other thing I've made that I wanted to show you is I've made a couple of tags. You might remember in the first video when we were cutting out how we cut out all those little tags. Well, I've gone ahead and created a couple here, and all I've done is I've just used my ink blending tool with the antique linen in the background. So I colored the white tag in antique linen. Then I came over the top with my background stamp using the Distress Oxide Walnut Stain, and I stamped some of my background on there. And then I used, you know, those dots I was showing you before, I stamped those in the speckled egg over the top. And then once again, I've got a couple of little words that I've stuck on there that I've trimmed out and then edged with the Walnut Stain Distress Oxide to create these cute little reinforcements. That's just a 1/4 inch hole punch, and rather than have the hole, I took the cutout piece and I stuck it on top. I colored it with the speckled egg, and then I just did a 1/16 of an inch hole in the center of that. So that's how I created those, and I'm actually wanting to put those underneath here, so they'll probably sit somewhere there like that. And then my little butterfly I'm going to stick up here. So I just wanted to show you how I'm going to stick that down because I have it in half. So I'm just going to take my glue and I'm just going to run a little bit of glue on where the body will go. And I'm going to use my tweezers here to help me position. I'll just move that one out of the way. I'm just going to just stick that part down there, and you can see that makes the wings stand up nicely. And then I'm going to come in with the other side and do exactly the same thing. So just a bit of glue along that body edge. And when I stick it down, I'm going to match the bottom like that. So what I'm trying to do is get those bottom wings closer and then the top ones further apart. So that's what it looks like. You see I've left a little gap here just so that they sort of sit further apart and these ones are closer together. And then I'm just going to put some glue in the center here. Like that. And then I'm going to take my little body that I made and I'm going to use my tweezers. And again, I've cut these off a little bit shorter. I'm just rolling the top there so it's a bit rounder. Take it with my tweezers and I'm just going to pop that in there like that. And that's my little butterfly. And you can curl up those wings however you would like them to go. So I'm going to go ahead now and fiddle around where I'm going to put things and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. Well, there you have it, guys. I've actually finished my card now. So what I ended up doing was, I don't know if you can see down in here, I've added some of that little, you know, the little stem we made. I added some coming out from underneath the flower and finished it here, and then I added a little bud here, the one that I showed you, and then that other little flower I made, I popped that center in there and popped that down the bottom. And then here's our layered flower that we made that I've put in the corner, and I've added some leaves. There's one there, there's one there, there's one there, and then these are the little tendrils that we made as well that I've popped in there too. I've popped my two little tags down the bottom here. I've added another word up the top here, and then you've seen me pop the butterfly on, and all I did was add another little tendril coming out there, and that's my bow that I've added just to tie that card together. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed that project. It was quite a lengthy project, but as I said, you don't have to do all the techniques that I covered here. They were just shown to you to give you ideas, and you can take one or all of them and use them in your own cards. So if you like that, it would really help if you hit the like button, and also if you subscribe to my channel and hit the notification button, you'll know when I bring out my next lot of videos. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you in the next one.